The story of Zaccheus in Luke chapter 19. I was thinking about this phrase, you become what other people think you to be. What do you think? I was reading in the paper about this guy, you see, who committed suicide because he'd been wrongly put onto a sex offenders register. And it was a clerical error. And so he faced the injustice of a total exclusion. And so to speak, he subsequently excluded himself totally from society through suicide. Incredible, isn't it? The power of public opinion and the power of acting in response to the way you think people think of you. So it just made me think this. Is that what Zaccheus was going through? Was that what it was like to be a tax collector for Zaccheus? Somebody who's rich in a society where everyone else is poor. Somebody who is a collaborator where everyone else is going to be kind of pro-Jewish. To be seen as somebody to be ostracized. Somebody you cross the street to avoid. How do you feel about that situation? And so he's a public official. He'd be a big, important person in a small village community. And yet the crowd murmurs, he's gone in. Jesus has gone in to be the guest of a sinner. So what's the proof that he was a sinner? Well, the proof, as far as you can really say, was that he was a tax collector. That was the proof. It was public opinion. He was reckoned to be somebody of bad character, and so he faced the temptation of becoming what he was thought to be. So maybe, to an extent, you do become what people think you are. What do you think? But Zaccheus knew that he'd done wrong. He had so much guilt that no fourfold restitution could cover it. In verse 8, I will pay back 4 times, He was remorseful, but he was stuck. He was stuck in his remorse. People get stuck in their self-righteousness too. He was paralysed by his guilt. Do you remember the story that Jesus told of the Pharisee in the temple? Standing next to the tax collector, and the Pharisee standing there, arms stretched open. I thank you, Lord, that I am not like him. Such nauseating gratitude. and the tax collector saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. Interesting. He was stuck in his position. He was paralysed by his position. But the Pharisee in the temple was, after all, right, wasn't he? He was okay. Which one do you associate yourself with? It's a bit worrying, isn't it, really? He wasn't a bad man morally. He was, according to the law, the Pharisee in the temple was righteous, upright, a good guy. Somebody you want to invite to your parties. And he was good as well in his own eyes. And he had genuine gratitude for the blessings God had given him. Think of that. Oh man. But that self-righteousness stopped him reaching out to God. At the same time, simultaneously, it stopped him sinking down further into sin. So it just kind of kept him at a level. It prevented him from reaching for God because he was too full of himself. At the same time as stopping him getting worse. But Zaccheus had already got worse. He'd already sunk almost beyond trace. And the remorse was crushing him. If you lose the world's respect and you lose your own respect, what's left for you after that? What do? Remorse is like having a £10 million debt with no chance of repayment. I met this guy. He was talking about the fact that he'd maxed out on his credit card. He was up to his limit on his credit card. And his solution was to get another credit card. And he said he kept spending, and this is what he said. He said, it can't get any worse. And if you think about it, he's probably got a point, hasn't he? I mean, if you owe 10,000, what's the difference between owing 10,000 and owing 100,000 if you can't repay it? So you just sort of kept worse in your debt. So maybe that's the same with sin. Why restrain yourself from committing sin if it can't get any worse? It just keeps kind of piling up. And maybe a past habit of sinning makes it easier for you to continue in sin. Maybe you get used to bearing the guilt, and so it makes it easier, like a bad habit, like an addiction, like swearing, like, a big fresh sin. Doing this used to shock me, but now I've got used to it. And I think that's what it's like when you get sunk into sin, and it spirals like a debt, and it spirals worse and worse. So how on earth do you get free from that position? Well, what happens next is that Jesus comes into Zaccheus' area, and Zaccheus comes within reach of Jesus. Okay, let's leave it there. God bless.